And good evening, my lovely Lost Tales, and welcome back to the Blue Rose Respite for my fantastical Friday stream. How are you all doing, my lovelies? I hope you all had a lovely week. It is almost the weekend. It is almost time for some rest and respite, but not me because I've got a script to write over the weekend, of course. But how are you doing, my lovelies? I hope you're all doing well. I just opened a window in my apartment because it is so stuffy in here. Like, it's not even full summer yet, and it's just so gross in my apartment. So I hope you don't mind. I've got my little fan next to me going at full blast, so I apologize if you can hear that at all in the background. I'm going to hopefully talk nice and loud and be nice and distracting over that. Oh, but how are you doing, my lovelies? I hope you've all had a really, really good week. I'm not gonna lie, it's one of those days where I'm just really kind of burnt out, and I was even juggling around the idea of cancelling tonight, but I was thinking, no, it's Friday the 13th, and we don't get many of those in the year, so I want to stream tonight. I want to see what happens next on Cage of Roses, but again, it'll probably be a slightly shorter stream tonight, probably about the 2-hour mark. But thank you so much to Nerdy Nim for your 4-month Prime resub. I really, really, really appreciate the support. Thank you so, so much. You're the best. Thank you. Also, we are raising money for Mermaids, which is a UK charity that supports trans and non-binary youths here in the UK and helps provide them the resources they need to live wonderful, fulfilling lives. So if you're able to, of course, I always say, prioritize your own financial responsibilities first before considering supporting me. But if you can donate any money towards this wonderful fundraiser that we're holding over the course of Pride Month, that would be hugely appreciated. We're already well over our halfway point. Still got plenty of days to go across the rest of the month. But anything you can donate towards Mermaids would be hugely appreciated. Thank you so much. So, normal opening spiel out of the way. Let me just hydrate a bit because this game is very pretty, and the girls in this are very pretty. And I'm looking so respectfully. I've had a pretty busy week too. I had an early and long work shift yesterday, and I've been busy with schoolwork on top of that. But other than that, I got to sleep in today, get some much needed rest. I'm super excited to see more Cage of Roses. That is awesome. I think it might be the hot weather. I've been sleeping weirdly. I'm a writer. Like, extra weird recently. I think it's a combination of both, like, it just gets stuffy in my apartment, but I can't open the windows because it gets noisy outside. So I'm having to take melatonin to have, like, a solid night's sleep past couple of nights. But I do appreciate that I can sleep in on the weekends. That is a very nice feeling, not gonna lie. I'm wonderful, Stephanie. I'm just working on Chaos War Dog Kit Bash. I'm putting some vents for a bloat drone, so it will look like it's more aligned with Grandfather Nurgle. Hell yes. Sure, it's going to look amazing. Like, some of the paint jobs people come up with for their minis are just incredible. I've seen some people paint their Space Marines in the colors of the new Sleep Token album, or even the colorations of House Viridian with the green, beautiful green and gold trim. And they've done like little arrangements with like the pink flowers and stuff like that, which is very, very cool. Oh yeah, I feel you. I find it really hard to sleep in the summer as well because of the heat. Yeah, listen, I'm Australian, so I feel like I should have, like, adapted to it by this point. But no. No, the heat is gross and I don't have an air conditioner. I just have a fan next to my computer and a fan next to my bed, and that's it. But I'm making do the best I can. It is muggy day. I'm hoping the thunder will clear the air. I hope so too. It wouldn't be surprised me if we maybe get some rain tonight here in London. But thank you so much for dropping by tonight, Nerdy Mim, and thank you again so much for the resub. I really appreciate it. And of course, like, if you guys prefer to lurk, that is totally fine. Everyone is welcome here at the Blue Rose Respite, and I hope you're all taking care of yourselves. Alrighty. Probably been in England too long. Isn't Australia more of a dry heat or is it pretty humid? That's a good question. It depends. I think more in the desert, like Central Australia, that's more of like a really dry heat. Whereas in the northeast, up in Queensland, it's more of a tropical heat that you'll get cyclones and stuff like that. In Perth, Western Australia, where I'm from, it's a little column A, a little bit of column B. It really depends. Like in the winter, it does get cold, don't get me wrong, and we do get hail and thunderstorms and stuff like that. But it's not so much like, humid, muggy, tropical heat. It tends to be more of a dry heat, if anything else. Though I will say, GW dropped the ball when they didn't give the new Emperor's Children of release high heels. We need our high-heeled Norse Marines. Oh, that would be so cool. Let the Space Marines wear heels, goddammit. Alrighty. So, shall we jump into Cage of Roses? Because this is one of those games where, because it's a visual novel with no voice acting, I am having to read all of the lines, so I do tend to need several moments to rehydrate, refocus before I continue. So that's probably why I'm going to burn through energy quite a bit faster tonight. So thank you all so much for understanding if tonight's a little bit on the shorter side, but I hope you're all just as excited as I am to see what happens next in Cage of Roses. Where was I? Yes, I think this was the backup. Okay. Last hydrate check before we get stuck in. Okay. Here we go. I am streaming. I am recording. I'm doing all of the things that I am doing. Good. Here we go. Meike had suffered in the culmination of the past 2 weeks, but she was not unique in this. Henny too was suffering, albeit in better circumstances than her poor mistress. Henny had been recuperating Walter Gerhardt's home ever since her frantic escape from Magdalena's abode. She'd spent the first week of her stay lying abed in the servants' quarters, unable to conceive of doing anything more strenuous than existing. You know what? That is a mood. That is such a mood recently. The horror she had witnessed during the night of the bandits' attack had left her nigh on insensible, her body dull and leaden. During this week, the local constabulary had arrived to ask Henny questions about all she had witnessed in the forest. Henny had answered all as honestly as she could, or at least as honestly as Walter had permitted. Henny had wanted to tell the police about Magdalena and her inhuman strength, but how could she? If Walter had not believed her, it seemed very unlikely the police would, particularly when Walter had a vested interest in Meike's affairs. Surely, as a bereaved groom-to-be, he should have seized upon any chance to reunite with his fiancée, no matter how implausible the circumstances surrounding said chance seemed. Walter did not seem to care overly much about Meike's disappearance, though, or, if he did not show it to Henny. Okay, so my money's on he paid the bandits to attack the caravan, but I don't quite know the reason behind that yet. I have a sneaking suspicion he had a hand in the people who killed her parents, but I'm yet to see why. I know, there's something about that seems like a little too like he's willing to brush this under the rug. His tears, if indeed he had the capacity to cry, were all shed in private, away from prying eyes. In any case, Henny had told the police only of the bandits, and of the murder of Lord and Lady von Essen. She told them that she had run from the carriage, Meike in tow, and that during their escape they had become separated, which was not a complete lie. It was very late at night, you see, and foggy with it. I could hardly see nothing. I was holding Lady Meike's hand, but I was so afraid I ran on ahead. When my senses had returned, I stopped to look behind me. I couldn't see Lady Meike anywhere. She just up and vanished. The pair of police officers had asked Henny if she had heard anything suggesting a struggle, or else her mistress's screams, but to this Henny stubbornly shook her head. I know what you're implying, and no, I didn't hear any such thing. I don't think the bandits got their filthy mitts on my mistress. I'm sure she escaped, but I've not a clue where she might be right now. She could still be wandering in the woods for all I know, like a nomad. Oh, I can barely stomach the thought. My poor mistress deserves much better than that. Please, good sirs, I know my mistress is still alive. She must be. Lady Meike might have looked delicate, but she was surprisingly strong. She was quite the tomboy when she was little. She was always getting into scrapes. A woman like that wouldn't simply die. She just wouldn't. It's impossible. Henny asked the officers to search for her beloved Meike, and they assured her that they would do everything in their power to help. If, by divine providence, your mistress still lives, then we will find her. Searching for missing persons is our job. But yeah, do you give a shit about your job? You have no need to trouble yourself on the matter further, Fraulein. It was something, Henny supposed, in the wake of the officer's visit, but their reassurances had not left her feeling particularly cheered. Henny had been able to tell the constables. Okay, I will also say, just a heads up, because Sam's in chat. Sam and chat in general. I will say, just because I'm really running on fumes, mental energy-wise tonight, I'm gonna say no pick my voices tonight. I just want to focus on reading the story for a bit and entertaining you guys in that way. But I will say, just tonight, I don't have the spoons to do any pick my voice requests, if that makes sense. So, thank you so much. In case anyone does arrive who does do it, just Sam, be sure to return their points to them. Be much appreciated. Thank you. Or even, like, if you want to, Sam, would you mind pinning a comment in chat saying, low, like, not low energy, no pick my voices tonight, please. Something along those lines. Just nice and polite, just a heads up. Henny had been able to tell the constables that the constables, like Walter, thought that Meike was a lost cause. Henny did not doubt that the local constabulary would send some officers into the woods to search for a body, but their perfunctory efforts would fail. They would find Lord and Lady Von Essen slumped in their carriage, but Meike would be absent. The police could comb the forest as thoroughly as they wished, but any search undertaken with so little information seemed doomed to failure. Henny knew, as surely as she knew her own mother's birthday, that Osberg's officers would never find Meike. Thank you, Sam. Much appreciated. Meike's body was not lying on the forest floor, abandoned, curled up and cut apart by bandits. Meike was, instead, at Magdalena's mercy, in her eerie abode deep in the heart of the forest. Whether Meike was still alive was a mystery, but Henny wanted to believe Meike lived still. She had to believe that. She could not bear the thought of her mistress being tortured. Henny feared she might have to countenance such a thought, however, as the days passed and she heard nothing of the police's investigation. Though Henny was familiar with the phrase, no news is good news, she rather feared that in this case no news meant that nothing was being done. Nobody seemed to care for Meike other than Henny herself, and she could do nothing on her own. Growing desperate, Henny had attempted once more to impress upon Walter the seriousness of Meike's situation, but he refused to listen. You would come into my office and talk of bloodsuckers again? Like, it's because you look like a fucking Belmont, that's why. Walter had asked of her, his expression one of cultivated disdain. I understand that you suffered a nasty tumble in the forest, Frau Henrique, but it has been a week since then. I would have hoped that you would have regained some of your senses since then. I assure you, Herr Gerhard, I'm quite sensible. I'm trying to tell the truth. Meike was... Kidnapped by a vampire. Yes, I know. You have said. Twice now. You are very adamant about your claims, I must admit. It's almost impressive in a way, but you are laboring under a misapprehension. Vampires do not exist. Ergo, a vampire could not have captured my Meike. They are the stuff of stories. But... Not another word. I'll not have you contradicting me in my own home, Frau Henrique. I took you in because I thought it the right thing to do. Please, do not make me regret my act of philanthropy. You can continue to remain here if you wish, for as long as you like. You have no idea how tempted I was to redeem a voice for sound like a brilliant voice actress. The implication being you are always a brilliant voice actress because you are. Why, thank you, Sam. I do appreciate that. But while you are subsiding upon my kindness, you must abide by my rules. I won't have you bandying about vampires in my home and distressing my servants. They are impressionable enough as it is, without you further exciting them with your wild stories. But they are not stories! Not to you, perhaps, but that is part of the problem. You do not want to be taken to an asylum, do you? Of course not. Then you would do well to hold your tongue. Silence is golden. But what about Meike? Will you not at least try to look for her? The police are trying, that is their job. It would not behoove me to get in their way. I'm sure they will turn Mike's body up sooner or later, if there is a body to be found. As for this talk of ferreting about this vampire's secret hidey hole, well... Impossibilium... God damn it with the fucking Latin. Okay, fine. Impossibilium nulla obligatio est. Now you may leave. I'm a busy man, and I have a good deal of work to attend to. Out! Out! And that had been the end of that. Swiftly dismissed by Walter, Henny had stalked through the hallways of his home, all the while burning with the shame and the anger of it all. Hang on, the volume is just way too loud for me. I'm just going to adjust that. Like, I already have the sound down pretty low on my end, but I'm just going to adjust that a bit. Okay, does that still sound good for you guys? How dare Walter treat Mike's welfare in so cavalier a manner? Why, it's almost as though her welfare did not concern him, as though he had not been poised to marry her and inherit her family's august title. That's what throws me off, like, okay, he's like giving me vibes that he does have a hand in killing her parents and trying to get her killed, but what would be the benefit of it? Because he was marrying her for a title. It's not like he was marrying her for money. Like, if she's dead, he doesn't get a title. Like, oh, what is going on? That, Henny had thought bitterly, was all Walter had ever cared about. He had not loved Meike as she did, because Meike was Meike. He had loved Meike only for her status. He had loved her because she was a Von Essen. Oh, how quickly love could vanish, when its foundations were so flimsy. Henny supposed there was a fancy Latin saying to express this sentiment, but if there was, she didn't know it. It could have been something like to get the title to her faster and then in turn to get to him faster. But then he would have to marry Meike in order to get the title. But he doesn't seem interested in searching for her, because it was something like, oh no, her parents are dead, but I still need to make sure she's safe because then we can still be married. He would be sending people out to look for her. That's what throws me off. Because he's giving me big suspicious vibes, but something's not adding up here. She was not half so learned as Walter, but all his books and all of his pomp. But at least she had a heart, one which was surely bleeding for her mistress's sake. With no strings of her own to pull, the police incompetent, and Walter well and truly alienated, Henny had known not what next to do. Henny had spent the following week ruminating, at a loss. She felt well enough now to move, and so she did. Henny began to help her fellow maidservants tend to the household chores in Walter's home, for want of anything better to do, though she was not one of Walter's official employees. Moving her hands gave her some relief from the thoughts, which whirred in her head, and Henny was acquainted enough with the housework that these mundane, repetitive tasks were almost welcome. Maybe there's another noblewoman he's got his eye on. Possibly. Maybe he's already infatuated with someone else, but he was still going to marry Meike for her title. But now that Meike is dead, he can now pursue ambitions elsewhere. Beating carpets and polishing banisters reminded Henny of a simpler, happier time when she had worked for Lord and Lady Von Essen, and during her breaks had sneaked into Meike's room to play cards with her. Meike had always lost at cards. She had been hopeless at it. Her ability to tell lies had been almost non-existent, and she had told many lies for Henny's sake. She had risked her own life for that of a maid. Would any other mistress have been so kind? Henny did not imagine that Meike's mother, the indomitable Lady Von Essen, would. She was the kind of woman who would have drowned puppies to save her own neck, not that her ruthless calculations had done her much good in the end. She had died, but Meike had not. Not yet, at least. That was what Henny hoped. With each day that passed, however, it grew harder to cling on to this hope of hers, which had begun to look rather fragile. It was easier for Henny to endure her anxieties while the sun was up, and she had chores to attend to. At night, however, as she lay in bed in the darkened servants' quarters, her fears began to crowd in about her. Meike was never far from Henny's mind, but it was impossible to completely extradite her young mistress from her thoughts during quiet moments such as these. Scored by the slow, soothing sighs of 6 other women, all curled beneath their thin covers, dreaming their own domestic dreams, Henny thought. She was so lost in her thoughts on one particular night, however, that she failed to hear the creak of floorboards beneath her, and, as such, nearly jumped out of her skin when a soft voice called to her from the shadows. You're pretty.
Are you alright? Oh.
Henny gasped in surprise and wheeled around, her elbow bumping against the chipped sill with a dull thud. The collision of elbow against windowsill was a loud one, but Henny's resultant curses were louder still.
Damn it!
A couple of the maids shifted at this, their eyelids fluttering, but they did not awake, not a single one of them. They must have been exhausted by the tasks they had to perform day in day out under Gertrude's watchful gaze. Walter Gerhard might have cared much for his missing fiancée, but he cared a good deal about the running of his home, and he had ordered Gertrude to be exacting in her duties as his housekeeper. His maidservants were all run ragged, and Henny was no exception to this.
Goodness me!
The owner of the timid voice who had startled Henny so exclaimed, then started forwards. A shaft of moonlight fell upon the mysterious interloper's face, and Henny soon divined that they were not so very mysterious after all. The speaker was none other than Agnes. She's pretty. Agnes Beaker was a small, slender thing, about 15 or 16 years in age, with a shock of fiery red hair, rather like Meike's that did not at all match her reserved personality. Her snub nose was smattered liberally with freckles, and her eyes were brown, like those of a doe. Henny made little effort in integrating herself with Walter's servants. It seemed a waste, given she had no intentions of remaining in his household, but she had grown rather fond of Agnes despite herself during the last 2 weeks. I need one of those Liz Victorian era shirts so badly, they look comfy. I will say, as someone who owns like a floaty, Victorian style chemise that I sometimes sleep in, it's really nice in the summer because it's so breathable. The fabric is so light and flowy. You just kind of woofed around like a dandelion seed on the wind. It was hard not to be fond of Agnes when she was so sweet and so gentle and so eager to please. Though Henny thought grimly, she did not at all feel that fond of her now, with her elbow smarting as it did.
I'm very sorry.
Agnes mumbled this apology to her feet, her fingers entwining together at her front. She was wearing a nightgown, a white shapeless thing made of flannel, that seemed several sizes too large for her. It swamped Agnes's diminutive form, making her appear even smaller than she already was.
I didn't mean to startle you. I only saw that you were awake, and, well, I'm also awake, as you can clearly see. Yes, I can see. It might be dark, but I do have eyes, and ears alongside them. Right, of course. I'm sorry, that was silly of me to say.
Excuse me.
I always seem to say silly things. The other maids said I might have porridge for brains, and maybe they're right. Little idiot, her mind calls me, and I think she's right. But I'm getting carried away again. Sorry.
Agnes flushed, and her whole face seemed to catch fire. Her cheeks and her hair a bright, striking red.
I have been finding it hard to sleep lately myself. I've not been here all that long, and I'm missing my parents, and... Oh, but that's not important. I actually wanted to talk to you, about you, not myself. I've wanted to talk to you for a while, actually. If you don't mind, that is. Well, that depends on what you want to talk about. Oh, well... I hope this doesn't seem like too much of an imposition. I don't want to pry, really. But I've been wondering. You, were attacked by bandits, weren't you? At least that's what I heard. Hermione was talking about it. I don't know if it's true or not, though. Hermione says a lot of things. She's an awful gossip. I thought that might have been one of her silly stories. It almost sounds too dramatic to be real.
Henny surveyed Agnes mutely for a few moments, unblinking. Walt had warned Henny not to speak of that night among his maids, for fear of exciting them, a warning Henny had tried to adhere to. She possessed no desire to make an enemy of Walter Gerhard, not when she had been hoping to form an alliance with him. This had been before Walter's second insensitive dismissal of Henny's worries, however. Now the young maid knew Walter could not be persuaded. He was an arrogant bully of a man, and Henny no longer cared tuppence for him. She would have preferred to keep out of trouble, but it wasn't as though Henny had spoken of her experiences with the other maids. She had been stony-lipped about the night the bandits had ransacked Lord and Lady Von Essen's carriage, and about her and Meike's escape. If the other maids had guessed what had happened through hearsay and whispered rumours, Henny could hardly be blamed for it. She would only be confirming what Agnes already suspected. And so it was, after a pause, that Henny replied.
No, Hermione is right. I really was chased by a bunch of rotten bandits. So was my poor mistress. Goodness, I was sure Hermione was making things up again, but...
Hang on, lighting's a touch too bright. There we go.
Does that mean there really are bandits out there in the woods?
Agnes cast an uneasy glance out of the window, then shuddered.
I've no need to go into the woods myself. My parents always warned me it was dangerous, but it's scary to think about all the same.
It was scary to live through too, I assure you.
But I reckon it was much worse for my mistress. Oh yes, I'm sure it would have been. I'm sorry. I'm glad you're all right, at least. But your mistress... That must have been difficult.
It was, yes. It still is. Do you think about her a lot?
Every single day. I see. I'm sorry for asking so many questions. I'm just curious is all. I've never met anyone who was attacked by bandits before. It must have been terrifying. I just hope I don't seem tactless. Hermione says I talk before I think, but Hermione is rude to everybody, even Frau Schreiber.
It's alright. You couldn't be more tactless than your employer is. At least you actually seem to care.
You mean Herr Gerhard?
That's right.
Did you have a quarrel with him? Hermione said he'd been shouting at you in his office last week, but I don't know if I believe that either. Herr Gerhard is strict, but he isn't such a bad man. There are worse employers, and it was nice of him to let you stay here. I don't think he means ill.
Maybe he doesn't mean any ill, but I don't know if he means any good either. Herr Gerhard only seems to care about Herr Gerhard, which is fine, I'll fancy, if you're a businessman and you're trying to get things done. Treating your fiancé in such a flippant way, however, I think that's downright wicked.
So you two did have an argument?
We did, yes. I didn't know anyone had overheard it, though. It was supposed to be private.
I'm afraid nothing stays private for very long around here. It took Hermione less than a week to sniff out my family's darkest secrets. Though how she did it, I have no idea. She seems to know absolutely everything that happens in this place. Do you think she's listening to us right now?
Henny glanced at Hermione's bed, which was located next to Agnes's, the second along from the window. The famous Hermione herself was lying beneath her covers, curled up, her copper hair spooled across her pillow like a tangle of snakes. Henny had spoken little to the maids under Walter's employ, but even she was aware of Hermione. She appeared of an age with Henny, perhaps slightly older. She was so stunningly beautiful she seemed almost otherworldly. Though a maid, Hermione possessed an attitude more appropriate for a duchess. She often ignored her tasks to gossip with the other maids, a fact which frustrated Gertrude to no end. Gertrude was forever having stern words with Hermione, who never seemed to take any of it to heart. For the amount of times she found herself in hot water, Hermione had yet to be properly scolded. Henny had to wonder why Hermione had not been dismissed from Walter Gerhard's household, but perhaps Walter had a soft spot for her. It wasn't hard to see why. One only needed to look at Hermione's face. She looked eerily like Meike, so much so they could have been sisters. I think she's in league with Herr Gerhard, the fiancé, somehow. Walter Gerhard must have a type. Yeah, because I was thinking even Agnes looks kind of like Meike. I swear to God, if Gerhard is sleeping with all of his maids and they all look like Meike, Like, there's nothing wrong with having a type, but that's creepy. That's kind of creepy.
I think she's asleep.
Agnes spoke while looking at the dozing Hermione, but her voice was uncertain. Frowning, Agnes turned her back on Hermione and said,
Hermione said that you said that your mistress was still alive. Her Gerhard thinks she was killed by bandits, but you think she's been taken a prisoner instead? You said she'd been kidnapped by a...
Agnes leant in close to Henny. Then, very quietly, she said,
Vampire.
The word vampire was horribly out of place in the quiet servants' quarters. It sounded ludicrous, preposterous even. Henny could see with uncomfortable clarity why Walter had regarded her with such scorn when she had told him about Magdalena. Henny must have appeared crazed when she had begun espousing such grisly subjects which were unfit for ladies to dwell upon. But no matter how unfeasible, that did not make it any less truthful. Excuse me.
Yes, that's exactly it. I know that vampires exist. I've seen one with my own 2 eyes. I won't let anyone deny that, not even Walter bloody Gerhard, even if he thinks he thinks me touched in the head. I'm not crazy. I'm perfectly sane. A vampire kidnapped my mistress. She kidnapped me too, but my mistress convinced her to let me go. Even now she is still there in her castle, while that awful vampire does God knows only what with her. Meike risked her life for my sake. Helping her is the least I can do. But there's nothing I can do. I tried to talk her Gerhard around, but he won't see reason. He threatened to send me to an asylum if I keep up this talk of vampires, and then I really will be in a pinch. I'm trying to be strong for Meike's sake, but I haven't the foggiest of what to do next. I feel like a headless chicken. And if you're anything like your master, you probably think I'm baddie now too. Oh no, I don't think you're crazy, Henrique, not at all.
You don't?
No, you might be crazy with concern about your mistress, but I can't blame you for that. You must love her a lot to fret this much. You're a very loyal servant.
I was more like Meike's servant. I was more than Meike's servant.
I was a friend too. We've been together since we were children. She meant everything to me. She still does. I wanted to save her more than anything, but I keep running into dead ends. Doesn't seem like anybody in this place wants to help. It does sound very difficult, but you're not alone anymore. I believe you, even if her Gerhard doesn't. I don't think you're a liar, and I don't think you're insane either. This is why I wanted to talk to you, actually. It's because I heard about the vampires, and, well...
Agnes's doe-like eyes filled with determination as she said,
I had to check first, to make sure her mind wasn't telling tales. But now I know there's some truth to the rumors. I'd like to try and help you.
Oh, Agnes, you're so sweet. I really hope you don't get hurt.
Help me?
Now this was a surprising turn of events. Henry hadn't expected that Agnes would be so willing to swallow her frankly unbelievable tales of bloodsuckers, nor that she would offer to aid her. What this aid entailed, however, was yet a mystery. Agnes was small and slender, with limbs like twigs, and she was so very young. It seemed unlikely that she knew very much about the world. She might even have been more isolated than Meike had been. Agnes, unlike Walter, had no wealth nor any connections. She was just a maid, a simple girl from a poor family, working for pennies to support her parents. While it was nice to be believed, Henny did not place much faith in her as a potential ally. She didn't want to get her hopes up prematurely, but she was intrigued.
How could you help me exactly?
Agnes must have heard the apprehension in Henny's voice because once more she blushed.
Oh no, you must understand. I wouldn't be helping you, not directly at least. I'd never be able to best a, vampire. But I know somebody who can.
And who would this be?
If you want somebody to look for your mistress, somebody who really cares, you should go to St. Cecilia's this coming Sunday. There's a priest who sometimes gives sermons there called...
Okay, so I am a fan of a fun little... It started out as like a kind of a visual novel app called the Arcana. For those of you who are familiar with the Arcana, it took me a second to be like, wait, how do I pronounce that? Oh, I know how to pronounce that last name. Julian fucking Deverak is one of my all-time biggest fictional crushes. He's like 6'5" and is an absolutely beautiful, pathetic simp, and I love him.
There's a priest who sometimes gives sermons there called Father Deverak. He's very open-minded. I'm sure he would listen to your concerns without questioning you.
He must be very open-minded indeed, to swallow stories about vampires in good faith. Yeah, that tracks for you. Listen, I have a type. And I'm very happy with my type.
And Father Deverak, where does he come from? That's no name I've ever heard before. He's from Bohemia, I think. He has a bit of an accent, but his German is fluent, and his sermons are really quite good.
Okay, so if he's from Bohemia, I kind of know maybe what kind of accent I can maybe try and give him. Okay.
My mother is very fond of him. She always used to take me to listen to him preach whenever he was at St. Cecilia's, which he isn't always. He would often disappear for weeks, sometimes months at a time.
So he's a travelling priest?
Agnes nodded. He recently returned from a trip, though. I think he's in Osberg now. You should be able to see him this Sunday, or at least I think you should. I'd be disappointed if you can't. I've been meaning to attend his sermon since this Sunday, too.
You sound very fond of this Bohemian priest.
Oh, I am. I can't sing Father Deverak's praises enough. He's a real gentleman. He helped my mother a lot, you see, after my father... Well...
Agnes blushed hotly. It seemed to be her wont.
I won't go into that. It's personal. You'll probably find out sooner than later anyway, if you stay here long enough. Her mind likes to needle me about it, as if I'm somehow to blame for my father's actions. But enough about that. Father Deverak listened to my mother's concerns and he consoled her. He helped her through a very difficult time. I'm sure he'll be able to do the same for you.
The type is down bad scoundrels who can't stop blushing. How dare.
Am I that transparent?
If he doesn't yearn, he doesn't earn.
He sounds like a nice man, but isn't helping your family affairs rather different from hunting down vicious vampires? Well, my family's affairs were rather sensitive in nature. I'm not talking about a mere domestic dispute here. It was a complicated matter, but Father Deverak helped a lot, and I was sure nobody else would.
Sorry.
He really is incredible.
Is he now? Henny raised an eyebrow, but if Agnes saw it, perhaps she didn't. It was rather dark. She made no comment on it. Instead, she clenched her hands into fists and said with as much excitement as she dared, given the lateness of the hour.
Yes, he gives spiritual guidance to anybody who needs it, but he also has experience dealing with unholy monsters. He even performs exorcisms. He's the perfect man for the job, and he's a priest. You can trust him.
Well, I wonder. A ponderous Henny glanced away from Agnes, whose enthusiasm was almost palpable to the window. It seemed highly unlikely that a single priest would be able to stop Magdalena, even one who came as highly recommended as this Father Deverak. Henny had seen how Magdalena had torn those bandits limb from limb in the blinking of an eye. It would take a whole fleet of men to stop Magdalena, and it was doubtful whether even that would be enough. But this Father Deverak must have been better than nothing. Henny had little faith in Agnes's priest, but she would seek him out all the same. She did not stand to lose anything by a brief she would not stand to lose anything by a brief consultation, not when she had already lost everything she cared for.
Excuse me. All right then, let me speak to this highly esteemed father. Perhaps he can help.
Henny only hoped, as she gazed at the night sky, that she had not left it too late. Meike felt weary when she awoke the following morning, exhausted after a night of uneasy sleep which had been broken up with bad dreams. The gash upon the inside of her wrist still stung, though it had stopped bleeding. The gash was not particularly large, but it showed up starkly on Meike's skin, a thin ribbon of bright red which intercepted the whiteness of her arm. She's so pretty. Meike sighed when she sat upright, shivering as the covers slipped from her bare shoulders. It was a cold, overcast sort of morning, the rays of light which streamed into her room thin and grey. Briefly, Meike considered rising, dressing and washing her face, but soon dismissed this idea. She had not the energy to go about her daily routine as though nothing were awry. The thought was almost unbearable. Meike's tiredness was something more than a physical feeling. It was entrenched within her mind, deeper than the tangled knot of roots which fed the mightiest of oak trees. Magdalena had not taken so very much of her blood the night prior, but Meike still felt drained. She still had enough blood in her veins to animate her arms and legs, but her body refused to move. She was too preoccupied with her thoughts of last night, and of Magdalena. Though unwilling to admit it, Meike might have begun to grow fond of her captor. Oh, she's blushing. For a self-proclaimed monster, Magdalena's company had not been too unbearable, not when she spoke to Meike of novels and of poetry. Meike had even begun to wonder whether Magdalena was a monster at all. Surely nobody who talks so animatedly about romanticism could be wicked. Let me introduce you, darling, to Lord Byron. Fucking Lord Byron. Everyone was fucking Lord Byron, that's who. Why, Magdalena liked a lot of the same poets Meike did, and many more she had never even heard of. Magdalena spoke of the written word with such piquancy that it was really rather touching. More like Lord Byron, eh? At least until she had introduced a knife to Meike's wrist. Magdalena had not looked happy about this turn of events, however. She had been rather apologetic about the whole affair, but this served only to make Meike even more curious. Why had Magdalena drained her blood if she did not wish to do so? Meike turned this thought over in her head, stewing in it, when...
Excuse me?
Meike's musings were interrupted by a rapping of knuckles upon her bedroom door, and a familiar voice which spoke in an unfamiliarly soft tone. It was, of course, Magdalena.
Are you awake, Meike? And if so, may I come in? I've brought you your breakfast.
Meike frowned and, at letting her arm drop to her side, cast her gaze at the door. Magdalena's nightly visits had been regular throughout Meike's imprisonment, but never once had Magdalena visited her in the morning. Meike had not known Magdalena was able to wander about in the early hours, being a vampire. She had thought them sensitive to the sunlight. Not, Meike supposed, that it was particularly sunny morning. Miserable would have been the most apt descriptor for it. Hey, Scaracomi, how's it going? Welcome back. Her bedroom was freezing.
Meike?
Magdalena's voice called through the wood once more, and though Meike had resolved anew to dislike her, she felt her heart quiver. Magdalena sounded less like an incontrovertible villain and rather more like an awkward, uneasy young girl. Why, she sounded almost as ill at ease as Meike felt. Meike found she could not remain silent upon hearing this. Maybe Henny had been right about her. She was too soft, and so responded.
Yes, I'm awake, and yes, you can come in.
Meike's words were answered with the click of a lock. Her bedroom door swung open to reveal Magdalena, a tray balanced precariously between a hip and her right hand. Magdalena set the tray down, then turned to lock the door. Once it was secure, she brought it to Meike and said,
Oh, I am glad to see you're awake. I was afraid you might be lying in your bed, passed out after last night's excitement. Is that what you want to call it? Well, I suppose it could be more direct, but it doesn't feel very genteel to talk of bleeding you like a pig. That is what you did, though, and it wasn't very genteel either. I know. I didn't much want to do it. But I don't suppose that counts for much, really, when I still did it. I tried to be quick about it, though, and I cleaned your cut afterwards. I'd hate for it to get infected. It was awfully considerate of you, I'm sure.
I'm being as considerate as I can, which I know isn't very much. But look, I wouldn't be here to see you if I didn't care. Here's your breakfast. Are you hungry? Magdalena handed Meike the tray, which she accepted, the teacup shifting on its saucer. Meike poured herself a cup of fragrant tea with one weak, trembling arm, though she wasn't much in the mood for it. Meike didn't want to eat or drink anything. She felt too weary. Magdalena was looking at her with expectant eyes, however, and Meike didn't want to upset her. I just woke up from my nap. Okay, honestly, that is completely fair. I'm having a shorter stream tonight because of the heat. And honestly, in the summer, like, it's lovely because my PC is like a fun little toasty machine that just keeps my legs warm during the winter. In the summer, though, it is like having a hot fan blowing, like, building heat up from under my desk. Ugh. It gets hot here. That would have seemed cruel, especially when she was trying so hard. I was wondering... Meike swallowed a mouthful of her tea. It was chamomile today. They looked at Magdalena curiously. What is it? You have been shut up inside this room for a long time. Almost an entire fortnight. Listen, I've been locked in my apartment for longer. If I were in your position, I'm afraid I would have gone quite mad. Meike did not say as much. She was busy sipping her tea, and she did not wish to discard the possibility. Her warring feelings about Magdalena did not point at all to a healthy mind. But then again, Meike's mind had never been healthy, not in a way a young woman's ought to. I do feel sorry for you, keeping you cooped up like this. It can't be good for you. I would hate to make you miserable, or, well... Magdalena smiled bashfully. If she had been human, perhaps she would have blushed, but her pale cheeks remained chalky. More miserable than I am making you already. I don't want us to be enemies. I'm quite glad of your company, in fact, and I've tired of this jailer and warden act. I think it might be nice if we could engage in a pursuit that would be more conventional to a pair of young ladies. The word conventional put Meike in mind of her mother, and the Von Essen drawing room, and her horrid embroidery hoop. Her back stiffened, and with a frown she said, Such as? My, you're looking at me with such mistrust. I have no ulterior motives here, Meike. I'm always very upfront when I wish harm upon people, and will continue to be so. What I say is what I mean. You have no need to second-guess me. I thought only that we might take a turn around the garden. It isn't much to look at now. You should have seen it 1 century ago. But it's less oppressive than this room, at any rate. Not that that's much of an accomplishment. Would you mind accompanying me? Magdalena's smile was light, but Meike could see something dark lurking beyond it. Not bloodlust, but a desire for something more intangible. Meike could still recall Magdalena's earlier claim that she cared about her, no matter how contrary her actions seemed to be. Did Magdalena feel guilty? Well, good. Magdalena should have felt guilty. She deserved as much, after what she had done. That was what Meike wished to think, at least, but part of her could not help but pity her. Meike had been lonely, shut up in her drab bedchamber, but what of Magdalena? I don't have any duvets, only fluffy blankets, and I've been flipping my pillows over to get the cold feeling. You'd think that used to the heat, considering I'm from a country where the normal temperature is 37 to 42 degrees, but no. Okay, we were talking about this earlier tonight, like as an Australian, I feel like I shouldn't be complaining about hot weather, but honestly, my apartment is just so stuffy and gross. Hey, Sophia, how's it going? Welcome back. Surely she had suffered worse, and for far longer. Though Magdalena had come, ostensibly, to offer Meike a respite from her incarceration, perhaps Magdalena had been hoping for a bit of peace herself. That was why, after a pause, Meike assented. Alright, we can go into the garden, if you like, though it has been such a long while since I last stretched my legs, I'm afraid I might have forgotten how. Oh, don't worry about that. If you fall, I can catch you. I'm very strong, you know. Excuse me. Meike grinned, her sharp incisors flashing, and as she did, Meike was struck by a very strange thought indeed. Magdalena looked surprisingly, disarmingly pretty when she smiled. You are gay! Thanks for the stretch check. Oh, look at the two of them! Look at these two! Carmilla who? Like, these two are so pretty. Also, I love that hat. I love me a good statement hat. Oh, it really is a dull day. Why, it's almost as gloomy outside as it was in. Magdalena sighed as she surveyed the garden, or what remained of it. She was wearing a wide-brimmed hat, presumably to shield her head from the sun's rays, but there was so little sunlight this might have been an unnecessary precaution. Meike, meanwhile, gripped a parasol betwixt her gloved fingers. Magdalena had offered it to her before they left to protect her pale skin, though this too had been a wholly unnecessary gesture. I'm starting to wonder whether this might have been a fool's errand. That's not a single scenic spot in my home. I don't know if it would be much improved by a little sunlight. I have no stomach for it, and it would be less cold at least. Now that was an interesting idea. Do vampires feel the cold? I don't know, but I can tell it must be chilly. If it wasn't, he wouldn't be shaking so much. Are you alright? I'm fine. I'll live. For the present, at least. For however long that Magdalena allowed it. I'm glad to hear that. Do tell me, though, if you feel a chill setting in. I wouldn't want you to catch a cold. We can go back inside as soon as the novelty of the great outdoors is worn off. Should I grab that clip from Happy Death Day and edit those two and stuff into it? You know what, that would be hilarious. Like, that's a great fucking movie. I haven't seen the sequel, but Happy Death Day is a surprisingly fun and campy horror movie. You are gay! I'll keep that in mind, thank you. My gloves should protect me well enough, though, and I don't think I'm in the mood to go back just yet. I am so sorry, my lovelies. I am so tired today. I'm so worn out. Are you too busy enjoying the view? I don't know if the view is all that enjoyable, but there is a lot of it. Ah, yes. There's one thing this grand pile doesn't want for, it's space. In fact, I think there's a trifle too much of it. The garden has been left to go to seed over the years, but can you blame me? There's only one of me, and I wouldn't even know where to begin taming all of this. Magdalena gestured to the garden, which sprawled out about her in a wild, unruly mess, all overgrown grass, decaying trees, and wildflowers which swayed in the breeze. There was a fountain not so far away, which had once been topped off with a stone effigy of Cupid. Cupid had since fallen off his perch, however, and he lay in pieces in the basin of the fountain, his shattered head spotted all over with lichen. The fountain itself, meanwhile, had stopped working many years prior. Its cracked basin was full of naught save loose leaves, dirt, and bits and pieces of Cupid's poor broken body. Past the fountain was a tangle of rose bushes, which had been left to run riot over the decades. Perhaps they had looked pretty once, when there had been gardeners to trim them into regulation, but now they were quite wild. You could just let the stream run a wool luck for you, Twitch would never know. I know, but I would know. Guys, and I don't feel comfortable doing a sleeping stream. Hang on. That's a bit better. The bushes were more thorns than roses, though a few roses that existed were still impressively red, scant splotches of colour against the otherwise grey landscape. The sky above the meandering pair, meanwhile, was festooned with clouds. There's that word again. It looks as though it might soon rain, and the air which snaked through Magdalena's garden was chilly. The sun was scarcely visible, though Magdalena still shied away from it. Though there was precious little sunlight to be had, Meike was still curious. Was it really safe for Magdalena to wander about like this? Do you often wander around your gardens like this? With my captives, you mean? Or are you referring to the time of the day? Both, I suppose. well, let me see. Excuse me. To the first, I would say no. I'm not in the business of consorting with my captives beyond what is strictly necessary. I would not do to get attached. It would not do to get attached. Not that there has ever been much danger of that. You are the first lady I've had the pleasure of spending time with. Perhaps that is why I've come all sentimental. Magdalena shook her head, as though bemused by her own antics. The breeze caught in her fair tresses as she did so her lovely hair fluttered about her shoulders. As for the second, no. I am not in the habit of pacing about during the daylight hours. I am not particularly fond of the sun, an opinion which is shared among the rest of my kind. I find it quite unpleasant, in fact. If it were any brighter today than it is, I would not have ventured outside at all. I can just about bear it for the present, but the summer is perfectly vile. Magdalena pulled her face. She looked so very incensed, she induced Meike to laugh. So you usually spend the day indoors? Oh, Weaver, thank you so much for the £4 donation towards mermaids. Thank you so much for your incredible, generous contributions. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Let's do a quick break for a sip. Indoors and asleep, yes. I'm being quite naughty, really, consorting with you like this. It's long past my bedtime. I did think it unusual that you came to my room this morning. Haven't you been able to sleep? I tried, but I was unsuccessful. Sleep seemed like a fool's errand, so I decided I might as well spend my time with you. Your company is more agreeable than being on my own, when I have nothing to distract me save my thoughts. And what thoughts, may I ask, have you been ruminating on? You may ask, but I might not answer. You're being awfully nosy for a lady, Meike. Did your mother never tell you to keep your nose out of other people's affairs? She might have mentioned it once or twice. And you would not do well to listen to her. We all have our secrets. Why, next you'll be asking me about my marriage prospects. Do you have any marriage prospects? Not anymore. Not that I'm aware of, at least. I was never much of a prize when I was alive, but now that trip has well and truly left the harbour. Magdalena's smile remained light, much like her bantering banter, but Meike thought it appeared somewhat strained. Now she was examining Magdalena in the morning light. Not that the morning was particularly bright. She could see how weary she looked. Magdalena's skin had been pale when Meike first met her, and now it seemed not entirely dissimilar to falling snow. Magdalena was white enough to seem sickly, but her under eyes were dark and smudgy by contrast, as though they had been bruised. Was that from her own guilty conscience, or else a lack of sleep? Maybe, Meike thought, the two were intrinsically linked. It was too much of a coincidence, surely, that Magdalena had lost sleep following last night's events. Let us talk no more on the subject of my love life. It's depressing to countenance, and deader, I fear, than the bandits I slew. Mood! Big fucking mood! What do you think of these roses? Magdalena paused by the untamed tumble of roses which spewed behind the fountain of Cupid. The leaves worm-eaten, but the roses themselves vast and untouched, like the red-lipped mouths of so many monsters. They are quite something, don't you think? They add a bit of colour to the place, at least. I think they must be the pride and joy of my little garden. They are certainly very vivid, yes. They are, rather, aren't they? Perhaps I ought to pick a couple of them to commemorate our excursion. They would look lovely in the vase on your desk, or maybe in your hair. At the very least, they might do something to alleviate how very desolate my home is. Oh, look at them! They're so pretty! Magdalena leant forward as she spoke, one arm extended. Meike watched as she made to pluck one of the large, heavy-headed roses from among its brethren. But, as she did so, Meike noticed something peculiar. The ties which fastened Magdalena's sleeves had come undone, Oh, and one of them had rolled down all the way to her elbow, exposing a good deal of her fair skin. Her flesh was uniformly white, a smooth sort of paleness it was impossible to replicate with powders. Magdalena truly looked as though she'd been made from falling snow, all compressed and compacted together, but it was not Magdalena's pallor which made Meike draw in her breath. Like, this feels like as scandalous as seeing a lady's ankle, like, exposed by a Victorian, like, in Victorian times, like, oh my god, we're seeing her exposed wrist, like, my, how scandalous. But what truly caught Meike's attention was a band of angry red welts which encircled Magdalena's arm. These marks were so pronounced, particularly against the paleness of Magdalena's skin. They looked like burns, or else. Meike's brow furrowed with newfound concern, not for herself, but for Magdalena. She could not countenance how Magdalena had received wounds like these. She had thought Magdalena indomitable, impossible to best in a competition of strength. Surely no human could have left such marks. These marks could have been left by an animal, Meike supposed, but Magdalena had dispatched of 4 fully grown men without blinking. Would an animal, even a wolf or a bear, be able to best her? In any event, the wounds did not look as though they had been inflicted by any great hulking creature with a maw full of sharp teeth. They didn't look large enough. Though these marks were small in circumference, they weren't shallow. They were garish even in the weak autumnal sunshine, all puckered, raised welts which had begun to bruise. The rest of Magdalena's skin was pale as death, but these marks seemed almost akin to a tableau of violence. Who in the world had done such a thing to Magdalena, and why? How? Meike felt rather bewildered. Oh, we got an achievement for this, reaching this milestone.
Forgive me if I'm being rude, but I could not help but notice,
Meike swallowed, tasting the cool breeze on her breath. She remembered Magdalena's earlier caution, even though she had spoken it in jest. You're being awfully nosy for a lady, Meike. Did your mother never tell you to keep your nose out of other people's affairs? But still, she wanted to know. It seemed important, all of a sudden, that she get to the bottom of this. There was something significant about the injuries Magdalena had sustained. Meike knew it.
What are those marks on your arm?
What?
Oh.
Magdalena drew back from the roses, as though burned by them. Then she glanced down at her arm. When Magdalena saw that her sleeve had rolled back, her expression twisted. She didn't blush, again. Meike didn't think her capable of it, but roughly tugged her sleeve back down. Her expression was one of supercilious guilt, that of a naughty child caught out by her governess. It is nothing, really. Please don't dwell upon it.
How could that be nothing? It looks painful.
It's fine. I'm a strong girl, and I can look after myself. You, on the other hand, mightn't be so fortunate.
You ought to worry more about your own affairs.
But... Now, that'll be no buts. This conversation is beginning to tire me. It's not very interesting. Let us be on our way. There is more of my garden to see, after all. Meike, seeing it would be impossible to talk Magdalena around, capitulated. Sighing, she looked at Magdalena and said, Fine, let's do that, then. That we shall. I've much more to show you. Do try to keep a pace with me, my dear Meike, or I shall leave you behind. Then you might never find your way back to my home. Would you care to take my arm to be on the safe side? Hey, Vince, how's it going? Welcome back. Good to see you. How's your birthday week going? I hope you're having a wonderful celebration.
That is very gallant of you, I'm sure, but I think I'll be fine.
So you mean to spare my affections?
Oh, my lady, how you wound me.
Magdalena's theatrics might have once brought a smile to Meike's lips, but she felt too preoccupied with Magdalena's injuries to attempt anything approaching merriment. Meike had seen those marks for only a few seconds, but now they felt imprinted upon her brain. That was not a sight she would forget in a hurry. Such wounds couldn't be dismissed as mere trifle, no matter how Magdalena had tried to change the subject. Her hastiness to hide the marks had been concerning, as was her caginess. Magdalena was definitely hiding something from Meike. But to what end? Meike could not even begin to guess. Magdalena and Meike... Actually, I'm going to save here quickly. There we go. Magdalena and Meike continued to promenade about Magdalena's expansive gardens, neither speaking more than seemed strictly necessary. Magdalena would pause at irregular intervals so as to point out various interesting features to her companion, but otherwise she remained silent, holding one hand to her head to prevent the wind from blowing her hat away. Eventually, however, Magdalena seemed to tire of her aimless wandering. The sky continued to grow darker as the minutes passed, and it soon began to rain, a faint patina of moisture which fell from the grey clouds above. Wishing to take shelter from the storm could begin in earnest, Magdalena paused by a bench, partially overgrown by tall grass, and took a seat. Oh! Look at those two and tell me they aren't deeply in love. I love sapphic vampires, and I'm so excited to eventually get to read V. Schwab's latest book that's just come out. I think it's something like Bury Me Among the Roses or something like that. And it's all about, like, it's inspired by Interview with the Vampire, but it's with lesbian vampires, and I'm very intrigued to read it. Meike sat at Magdalena's insistence. Her parasol unfurled to protect them both from the to protect the both of them from the continued rain, and looked at her companion with some concern. Magdalena had seemed sorry, I'm so tired. Magdalena had seemed animated enough when they had been wandering about her sprawling gardens, but now her energy had deserted her. Her head drooped, her hat falling from it, while her silvery hair spilled over her shoulders like moonbeams. Then she yawned, a yawn so deep it brought tears to her eyes. Look, all three of us are sleepy. Maybe I should rest. The rain continued to fall about them, a steady pitter-patter, while Magdalena wiped her eye with the back of her arm. Oh, goodness me. Magdalena glanced at Meike, abashed but unblushing, her skin the colour of alabaster. I apologize, that was quite rude of me. I must seem so churlish, inviting you out on a stroll like this, only to yawn in your face. If I were a gentleman, I fear I would have little luck with a lady as fair as you. Why, you would have every right to call me a bore. If you were a gentleman, I wouldn't be going for a walk with you unchaperoned in the first place. It would be scandalous. Yes, well, I suppose you aren't wrong on that account. That makes me feel fortunate, at least, to be a woman. Magdalena giggled, but soon it cleaved before yet another yawn. Who was the author again? I think it's V.E. Schwab, I believe, or V.C. Schwab. It's so real. Do rest if you're tired. I'm starting to think, like, I might go for a little bit longer, but honestly, you guys deserve, like when I'm streaming, I'm at, like, good, excitable energy, but I think it's just a combination between, like, both reading a lot of text takes a lot out of me, rather than just intuitive reactions to what I'm seeing. So I think I'm gonna go for just a little bit longer, but I might call tonight even earlier. Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, that's it. Which is somehow an even gayer title. Hell, yes, that's the name of the new book. I'm sorry, I wouldn't blame you, Meike, if you wished to slap me for being so impertinent. I'm not bored of your presence. I could never be bored of you. But, well, I'm so very tired. It's alright. I wouldn't slap you on account of something so small. It's irrelevant. But I can't be the most stimulating company, surely, when I could scarcely string two words together. For a woman on the verge of collapse, you've been doing an awfully good job at stringing words together. I would hardly know you were tired were it not for the bags beneath your eyes, and for the way you've been yawning, of course. Oh, of course. Magdalena let a hand fall to her lap, and there it rested. Sighing, she shifted closer to Meike, then... I apologize, but would you find it horribly presumptuous if I rested my head upon your shoulder for a few minutes? It is very quiet and peaceful out here, you see, being among mud the nature's embrace, and I've been dying to get away from my home for the last week.
It's so stifling in there, I cannot bring myself to relax. Now that I'm with you, however, I think I might be able to get some decent sleep. Or, at least, a brief nap. Then, you mean to use me as a pillow? If you would be so kind. Don't feel like you must indulge me, though. I would not wish to inconvenience you.
No matter how long you stream, we're grateful for it, but you come first. Honestly, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. Like, because even when I was getting things ready for tonight, I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. Okay, I've done my makeup. I gotta do this. So I think we might get to the end of this lovely scene, and then I might call it a night. I'll be perfectly honest. Again, I'm so sorry that I'm calling things early tonight. I just don't have the stamina for it tonight. I don't have the spoons. Like, I'm running low on mana. Let's put it like that. Because I don't have the spoons while a lot of people understand what it means. I'm running low on mana. Like, feels more appropriate.
I worry the weight of my oafish head might not be the most comfortable burden to bear. Oh no, you can use me as a pillow if you wish. I don't mind.
As far as impositions went, it was not so very great. Not compared to those Magdalena had inflicted upon Meike already.
You may do with me whatever you will.
Now that is a very tempting offer. Oh, Sophiac, thank you so much for the 245 bits. You are so sweet. Thank you so much for the bits. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
But, fortunately for you, I'm too tired to fully indulge in all the delights you might have to offer. For the present, I can think of nothing but sleep. Then sleep. I will watch over you. Like a guardian angel? Yes, if you'd like. Oh, how sweet you are.
Magdalena sighed, then shifted. She let her shoulders press against Meike's, her head resting against her. Her pale cheek pressed against the fabric of Meike's dress, and her eyelashes fell shut.
You really must be an angel to care for me so much. You deserve far more than a slap after all I have done to you, but... Shh.
Meike ran her fingers through Magdalena's hair, her knuckles grazing against her companion's scalp.
They are in love. Let's not talk about that now. You're tired. But I've done so many wicked things to you, Meike. I don't know how you can bear to speak to me. How can you stand to touch me? I've done nothing to earn your kindness, and everything to earn your scorn. Maybe so. Maybe so. But I'm not going to scold you for that now. Not when you're in such a state. And what kind of state would this be, pray tell? One which is hardly suited to continue conversation. It isn't very becoming of a lady. Please, rest. Is that not what you wanted? Yes, I suppose it is. I've wanted to rest for... oh, such a long time. For the last week, you said? It has been particularly bad this week, but I've been tired for longer than that. Longer than weeks, or months, or years. I can't say how long I've missed this sort of warmth. I've been alone for more than a century. It was almost more than I could bear. Until, I suppose, I met you. Your company has been most diverting. If you were to leave, I hardly know what I would do. Well, you've nothing to worry about on that front. I'm not going anywhere. Yes, I know you're not. You can't. I won't let you. Lena.
Meike spoke softly, a nickname slipping from her lips despite herself, yet it seemed unlikely Magdalena had heard it. Her eyelids were shut, her chest rising and falling, and save for the regular exhalations of her breath, she made no sound. She had fallen fast asleep. Okay, how are we doing for time? Can someone check the uptime for how long I've been streaming? I feel bad. This is like one of my shortest streams yet. Less than an hour and a half. God damn. Okay. finally found the book. Added yet another to my Goodreads shelf. I've heard such good things about it. I can't wait to read it. But I have like a whole stack of books behind me, fiction and non-fiction, that I need to sink my teeth into. Now you've had like an hour stream before. Okay, good to know that isn't just like a one-off. But yeah, I think just tonight it's a combination of both like the heat. I might end up like even having to do shorter streams when it gets really bad during the summer, just because the heat sucks my energy so quickly. And for visual novels that require a lot of focus and a lot of talking, I tend to burn through my stamina a lot quicker. So how's that Brotherhood of the Dagger series? I haven't actually started it yet. I just finished Lights Out recently, and I haven't had a lot of reading time at the moment. So yes, let's save that and go back to the main menu. I haven't had a lot of reading time at the moment because I've been working on something. But the next book that's on the list is actually We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix, which is a horror novel about a rock and roll band. I think it's a heavy metal band, that I'm really looking forward to reading because I loved My Best Friend's Exorcism, also by the same author. And I'm really excited to read that particular book. So We Sold Our Souls is the next one on my to-read list. But I think after that I'm going to start the Black Dagger Brotherhood series, or maybe crack on to The Poisoner by Ivy Ophelia. But let's wrap things up tonight, guys. Again, I'm so sorry that I just don't have the stamina tonight. I'm running so low on mana. I was running low on mana before we started. But thank you so much for joining me tonight, my lovelies. This was wonderful. I really hope you had a great time. We're just getting a little bit more of Cage of Roses, and all it did was entice our curiosity further. Next week, we will hopefully be introduced to Father Deverak and see what happens next for our beautiful winter and autumn coated lovers. But let's wrap things up, my lovelies. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, and if you've been lurking in the shadows and you like what you've seen so far, then please consider following. We would love to have you back at the Blue Res Respite. You're welcome anytime. Be sure to check out my other socials that are popping up in the chat right now, including my 2 YouTube channels, one for my ASMR tales and the other for my Twitch VODs, and my Blue Sky, my Insta, and my TikTok. I have an ongoing 24/7 broadcast over on my main YouTube channel, which is a collection of ASMR tales and creepypasta narrations, so be sure to check that out and give it some love. But let's see who's currently live, and we can go say hello. Hey, Thaf streaming. Why don't we go say hello to Thaf9 because they are cool and chill and having a grand old time. So I'm going to send you guys over to Thaf. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the night. Feel free to just vibe over on Thaf's stream because they are awesome. And also, again, I'm so sorry for cutting tonight short. I just don't have the mana for it. But thank you so much for joining me tonight, my lovelies. A big thank you to everyone who renewed their subscriptions and donated towards Mermaids. I really, really appreciate it. I will see you on Monday for more MonsterCon. We're going to be romancing Omen again. Maybe, hopefully getting a sexy ending, but we will see. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, my lovelies. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And remember, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and as always, stay wicked and wonderful. Good night, my lovelies.